My name is PJ Tenton-Lee and I'm 25 years old, a senior high school teacher too in AC Bernabe National High School, teaching oral communication subject to grade 11 students. Now, you are in what I call the Lee Show. LE, which stands for... What's a The Lee Show. LEE, which stands for Learn English Enthusiastically. And whether you like it or not, I am your teacher for tonight. Yes, tonight. And we're going to talk about some things that are important to your learning of English. Communication. So, now, let's move on and find out what we are waiting for this moment. Okay. Warning. I'm not so good at making vlogs because this is the first time that I'm gonna do this and we're going to talk about something valuable in the English language, but specifically only for grade 11 students in the subject oral communication in context. Now, oral communication in context is a core subject as stipulated from the Republic Act 10533, otherwise known as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. Now, let me just make this clear. It's already night, but I'm gonna do my best to show you something different. Charan! Well, I'm so excited to teach you something for tonight. And now for our first lesson, we're going to talk about communication, its nature, and the functions. Now, a lot of us people know something about communication as a process wherein the sender sends a message to the receiver, and then the receiver then sends a message or a feedback to the sender. But sometimes the receiver does not respond. Well, as we all know, silence is also a feedback. Anyway, so now let's move on to the meaning of communication. Now, communication is really significant for our daily lives because it also enhances our social personality. Communication came from the Latin word communicare, meaning to share. Okay? To share an information, an idea, knowledge to other people. So it's something that we do every day by just telling stories, narrating events, or just gossiping or chit-chatting with other people. We are doing communication. Even if we utilize our social media applications on our gadgets like mobile phones, laptops, and computers, we are doing this communication. Now, it is an act of conveying meanings from one entity or individual communication to or group to another through the use of mutually understood language, signs, and symbols. In the Philippines, we speak two languages at least, the Filipino or Tagalog and the English language. Now, most of the time, we are understanding one another through the use of our mother tongue. But as part of our curriculum in our education, we use English to communicate well and at the same time to venture on different career development goals and to become the great providers of our nation in the future. Now, communication can be manifested in so many ways through silent conversations, non-verbal communication, visuals, symbols, and other or different various categories that we can use. Okay, so that is communication. Even if you're at home and alone, you still communicate, but intrapersonally. Oh, you feel alone? It's because wala kang jowa. Anyway, you may not clearly see what's on the slide, but the photos show that communication is very vast, that it can connect or link us to our loved ones even if they are far away. Before in the past, humans relied on the birds as messengers or carriers of the messages going to different places. Now there was the birth of the telegraph, the mailman, the cell phone, television, radio, telephone, etc. We have the internet, the so-called knowledge explosion that we can see all over the world because we can send and receive messages in an instant. That's why the teenagers nowadays have this feeling of sentiments or melancholy that when they send messages to their crushes only see and do not respond. Well, it happens to me too, but I'm old, I'm not sure I can keep you away. When we say nature of communication, it means it's the origin, pinagmulan in Tagalog. And communication has different functions like the first one. Communication occurs between two or more people. Actually, I'd like to add that communication also happens within yourself. As I've said earlier, it's intrapersonal communication. You have the opportunity to wander on your thoughts, think of some ways on how to know yourself deeper, your personality, the way you interact with others whenever you feel like you want to talk to them. But most of the time, intrapersonal makes you someone like a loner. But definitely, you have the advantage of knowing yourself more than the other people. But according to this definition, communication occurs between two or more people. It means that there is a sender and there is a receiver. I know that there's a different discussion about the elements of communication, but let us know first the basic sender and receiver terms. The sender is someone who creates thoughts and messages to be channeled to the receiver, and the receiver shall decode the message, understand it before creating a feedback. Communication is about sharing information with one another. We don't want to be selfish. Whatever we know, as long as it is something valuable or can help the people around you, share it to them. Like what I'm doing right now, yeah. Two persons cannot converse with totally different topics at the same time. You have to provide your opportunity, the time to speak up, like a turn-taking process. That's the first function of communication. Look into these pictures on television wherein in the left side, you will see a boy and a girl talking to one another. I think the girl is sharing something to the boy, like she's saying that, "Hey, did you review for Miss Atkinson's English class? I think that we have a quiz for today." And then the second picture shows three men. I think they're greeting one another, sharing their experiences about their vacation. "Hey, I know that I had this fitted swimsuit during the vacation. What about yours?" And something like that. Let us move on to the next. Communication is a process. Now, the communication process is the steps we can take in order to successfully communicate. You just don't want to just blast off your messages and tell words that are offensive to other people. You have to think wisely and carefully, critically before sending something to them, unless the barrier is your emotions and feelings. It involves the transmission of information or message from the sender to the receiver to a selected channel or medium, while overcoming the barriers that affect the pace. The communication process should be continuous and dynamic. It takes place upward, downward, and laterally throughout the organization. It may seem to be simple, but sometimes communication is complex depending on the situation and context of the environment where the sender and the receiver take place. So, communication is a process. Communication occurs in verbal, nonverbal, and visual forms. Anyway, I literally have a guest here who will explain the types of nonverbal communication later. But let's talk about verbal communication. Remember that these three natures of communication can be expressed at the same time. Like what I'm doing right now, I'm talking to you, I'm speaking, I'm using verbal communication, but at the same time, I'm also using body language to emphasize the message that I want to address. Oh, later, I'll give you time, I promise. Okay, let me just finish here, okay? The verbal communication simply means that we convey our messages orally with the use of the mouth. We are creating our speech sounds, then combining those sounds to form words, phrases, clauses, or sentences, and poof, that's it. That's it. Your message is directed towards the receiver. All you have to do is to clearly articulate what you are talking about. If you do not pronounce it well, then misunderstanding, misinterpretation, and miscommunication may happen. She's ready. She's coming here. Okay, alright. I want you to go here. Well, thank you so much for inviting me here. My name is Dorothy Galorgi. Dorothy Gadorci, and I'm a witch who graduated from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I'm here to help he's my nephew. He's just trying to ignore me. Well, anyway, our topic is the nonverbal communication as the second form of communication. Nonverbal communication seems to be so different from verbal communication because it doesn't use words. You're not uttering it orally. Instead, you're using your body to communicate to other people. Imagine that without non-verbal communication, you will look like a pathetic duck or robot speaking in front of the people. Like, for example, this. Now, teachers, classmates, good morning, and I want to share my experiences during my Christmas vacation. See? You look like a robot that is not functioning. And it's so weird. Just like me, I am weird. And for us to communicate better to other people, we have to use body language, and that constitutes nonverbal communication. In the pictures, two persons are doing appear, disappear, one half, one fourth, one half, disappear, appear. And the touch of the hands simply denotes nonverbal communication. Now, technically, there are 6 types of nonverbal communication, and let us venture on the first. Silence. Usually, the first one is always referred as the kinesics, which is called the body language or gestures. I hope that you have experience going into a library just to borrow or read books for your assignments and projects. Now, in the library, there is this rule or regulation that states that silence, please. You're not allowed to talk. And the librarian will not tell you to become quiet or silent. She will simply just do this. Shh. And this one is considered as an example of kinesics, using body language and gesture. This one means to stop. This one, for us, it means okay, but for the others, it means money. Another thing is thumbs up, which means okay also. And, like simply doing this means goodbye. And that is an example of kinesics. The second type of nonverbal communication is what we call the oculesics. O-C-U-L-E-S-I-C-S. Again, it's oculesics. It means the eye movement, eye behavior, gaze, and eye-related nonverbal communication. Class, the eyes are an important part of communication process because they help us to project our feelings and emotions. When we are scared, when we are enraged or angry, when we are tired or sad or lonely, when we are bored, I'm bored in the house, I'm in the house bored.
Rock!
When we are happy. So that's oculesics. In a certain situation in class, the students are very noisy and then the teacher just glare to the students. The learners know what the teachers mean. By just directly looking into their eyes, it means to become silent. So eyes can also be something that we can use to determine if a person is telling a lie or the truth, or if the person is thinking. So oculesics is the use of the eye contact during our conversation. The third one is what we call haptics. Haptics is the use of touch to emphasize intentions and feelings, like doing handshakes. The other example earlier about appearing your hands, like slapping someone, punching someone, kicking someone, or if someone who wants to feel better, you just rub the back of the person, then that's also an example of haptics. Let's be careful because haptics can also be a situation wherein sexual harassment is delivered. So be careful in using haptics as a non-verbal communication to emphasize your intentions and feelings. I don't like being touched. one is the word chronemics. Now, chronemics is the role of time in communication from the word chronos, Greek word chronos, which means time. When do we usually use chronemics to communicate properly? Like, for instance, someone is mad at you and doesn't want to talk to you. You let him or her to pull down his or her head and wait for the right time to talk. Because feelings and emotions are considered as barriers in communication, and the time will help us determine if the situation is okay and it's taking place in the right moment. So that is chronemics. Chronemics. And the next one is, well, the fifth one is what we call proxemics, which means that it describes an individual's perception of and use of space, both personal space, how much space do they take up, and social space, the distance from one another. So just simply remember that proxemics means space. Look into the picture. There is, let's assume that they are a couple, okay? A couple is sitting on the bench, but they are distant from one another. So it simply means that there's something wrong with them. There is a problem. The space determines the message itself, and it conveys us that there is a predicament that happens between the two of them. So that is proxemics. Like another thing, when we usually do this with our friend, it means that we're close to them and it's okay to do this to them and they're not easily offended. But when we do this to someone who is just our acquaintance but not our close friend, no, that's wrong. Don't ever do that to someone unless you're pranking someone. Now, let's move on to the last. The last one is what we call the vocalics or paralanguage. Vocalics is the use of the voice that indicate emotion and provide cues as to how the message should be interpreted. When you are happy, you usually do this. I'm so happy for today because I won in the writing contest. And that's how your pitch goes, or the volume of your voice. But if you are mad to someone and you want to yell, I don't want to see your face ever again.
I don't want to see your face ever again.
And that high pitch is actually telling that person to say that because, well, that's a problem that he doesn't want to hurt you. Now, where am I going? Where should I go? Oh, so the last one is vocalics. Then we have the kinesics, the body language, oculesics, the use of the eyes. And then chronemics is the time, proxemics is the space, haptics is the touch, and then vocalics is the use of voice. Okay? I seem to be so tired now. I would like to go now, but where's my groupsake? Okay, thank you and goodbye. I'm so sorry about that. She's freaking me out. She's totally freaking me out and it's getting hot here. And I know that it's still October and November, Halloween is still far away. And, you know, she lost it, like using her wand and saying that she's a witch, graduated from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. No, she doesn't look like a witch. Or a combination of a wizard and a witch. But great, thank you so much for coming here and by discussing about nonverbal communication types. Now, it's my turn to explain the last part. This is what we call a visual communication, which is the third form. Okay? Now, visual communication occurs with the use of writing alphabets or symbols, drawing or illustrating a picture, and at the same time following the signs in the environment or around us, like the traffic signs. When earlier I said that verbal communication happens orally, but when we read or create text messages or letters on our notebook, that's not a verbal or non-verbal communication. Instead, it's what we call the visual communication. Okay? Imagine that you look into a certain drawing. There are no words, there are no alphabets, but you can still understand the message simply by looking into its symbolic identity or representation. So that's visual communication. I hope that you really enjoyed our first lesson in oral communication grade 11 students, take note that we are in the pandemic days and we don't know how long it will last. I'm going to tell you that you have the opportunity to access all the videos. You can find it in our Facebook group that I created, in my own Facebook account, our chat groups, and I'm also uploading this to YouTube. And you can visit it anytime. Just don't forget to subscribe. Anyway, thank you so much. My name is PJ Tetenli and this is The Lee Show, L-E-E, which means Learn English Enthusiastically. Thank you so much and